What's up, everybody? It's Dan, Binder Boneyard, coming at you from the office. We are doing a twofer today. This is the second of two podcasts. I'm burning out on the Father's Day, trying to catch up from being gone for so long. I know a lot of people came up to me at the show a few weeks ago and said how much they enjoy these and, all that stuff. So trying to stay as regular on these as I can. But sometimes it's tough. Try to do the best I can, but doesn't always happen. But hopefully you're enjoying your Father's Day. And, I am not a father. I do have a dog. I know that's an insult to real fathers, but as far as I know, I have no babies out there, but I do take care of a dog. And this business is my baby. So anyway, gonna get right into this guy. Got a lot of feedback from the show, and the last podcast was all about the show. So if you have not listened to that one yet, I suggest you jump back to that episode. This episode is going to be all about C-Series trucks. I think I've done this one in the past. I don't remember. I don't listen to my own stuff, and I don't pay attention to what I do. Like I said many times, I don't make notes. I don't do any research. I don't do I don't retain anything. Whatever. I just talk into a microphone, and sometimes little nuggets come out that are helpful. So C-Series trucks, Travelalls, Travelettes. We're talking 61 to 68. There were many changes along the way that we'll try and cover the high points here. I'm sure I will miss things. I'm sure you guys will let me know what I missed, but just try and help out the people that aren't as familiar with the 60s trucks as maybe they want to be, or they're interested in them but don't have one and they just are thinking about it. So this is covering the finer points. So 61 is when they came out with what we kind of generally refer to as the C-Series or C body or C model. I try not to use the word model because the 30s trucks, like 34 to 37, were C models. So I like to call the 60s trucks the C-Series. So the identifying features of the C-Series is the 4 headlights in a horizontal arrangement, a concave grille with kind of little oval holes in it. They had some basic trim package, kind of a zigzaggy chrome belt line on the Travelalls. They had a dash that was kind of a holdover from the A and B series. The A's and B's had a pod that was protruded out the top of the dash. So the whole dash on the earlier trucks was all smooth, kind of, curved around the cab. And then when you got to the driver's side, the left side, there was this gauge pod that just stood up and was kind of, I don't know. I don't care for that style. I don't like that flow. But they carried that into the early 60s trucks, and I don't know why exactly. They changed the gauge layout a little bit in it, but it was still that way. Glove box was in the center. Now I'm second guessing myself. I know in the A's and B's the glove box was in the center, but now the C's I'm starting to wonder if maybe it wasn't off to the side, because they did have a radio plate. That's right. So yeah. So the glove box is off to the right. The C series had a radio plate in the middle and the heater controller in the bottom of the dash. They also started introducing like the increased capacity heaters, and you started seeing air conditioning as a dealer add-on around then. Just modern updates. I think power steering was starting to come out, but it was the Ram assist style, not the power gearbox like the later trucks. Yeah, just little thing like the frame. They improved on the frame because the 57, the A series, as they introduced their new frame, it was wider, longer, more modern in dimensions. Well, they refined it again by 61, and improved where the steering box mounted, updated suspension points, little things like that, just subtle changes. So various interior packages, color packages. The two-tone was still popular from the earlier 50s trucks, but 61 was like the big change. You restyled the door shape is different. It looks exactly like the A and B doors, but they're shorter, just different stuff. So then 61 and 2 are that style. And like I said, the grill arrangement is its own unique setup, and so if you have one of those, you're kind of trapped into that era. And then of course the four-wheel drive stuff was all available. 61, I believe, was the first year of the half-ton four-wheel drive option, because now, like I said, I don't do any research on this. I'm just trying to go off of my experience, and there may have been some half-ton four-wheel drives in 58, 59. Now, yeah, like I said, now I'm second guessing myself, but I know for a fact that by 61 you could get half-ton four-wheel drive in Travelall and trucks. So they were their own animal. They had their own window crank style. They had the escutcheons on the door handle. Like, stuff was just changing slowly. So then you jump up to 63, and the model numbers changed. So in 61 and 62, they were C100, C110, C120, C130, like that. And then in 63, they changed. And I want to say they were A 1100 or A 1000, A 1100, A 1200, A 1300. That's what the VIN plate said. And I don't know if they went with the A because the number change, from the 3-digit to the 4-digit, or what. And that confuses people as well, because they'll call here and they'll go, they have a B1200. Like, oh, so it's a 64. Like, oh, I guess, I don't know. Like, and then it gets even more confusing as we go along here. But that's why we generally refer to that whole era as the C series, because the cabs were all generally the same with just minor changes on the exterior. So 63, they went back to single headlight. They had orange marker lights per the safety standard rule change, because 61 and 2s had clear signal lenses, and then in 63 they had to do amber. The grille changed to a concave side, kind of egg crate looking grille. The dash, big change on the dash. They went to round gauges, small round gauges, which I prefer that look. It's a flat dash panel. The dash just lays in better. Glove box. It just looks more refined. The heater controls, the radio placement, like all that. Just it looks so much better in the 63 and 4s. The dash gauge panel had little slits for the turn signal indicators, which I'm not a fan of. My 63, 64 Travelette has those, and they deteriorated. So now when the light bulb flashes, it's just straight white light right into your eyeballs. So at night, that makes for a little bit of a blinding experience. A few other subtle details. Some of them, like 63, still didn't have hazard flashers. It wasn't until 64. And even then, they were like a dash. They were added on the dash, be a red knob that you would pull out and make the hazards flash. No backup lights unless they were added on later. Mine has a dealer add-on backup light setup, and also a parking brake warning light. I've seen where they have a little light on the dash that when you push the parking brake down. And again, that was optional, definitely not standard. Same with no seat belts. You didn't start seeing seat belts until late 64 on those. If it had seat belts, they were added after the fact. More options in the drivetrain. The brakes were getting bigger ever so slightly. You were going from 12 by 1.75 to 12 by 2 on the 3/4 ton trucks, and then the 1 ton, the 1300s. They're kind of their own animal. Those brake setups and wheel ends, they kind of were using what they thought they needed to be. So there was some of the 1 ton brake parts are getting really hard to find. And then another, so they started using the same door handles and window cranks as the Scout 800, the Scout 80s, I should say, which then leads us into the 65 model. So 63, 64 were that style. In 65, they changed the grill again to what we call the whalebone style, where it's just 100 little slats, vertical slats. And the international emblem is just the international across in the center of the grill. There's no sidebars. There's nothing there. 7-inch round headlights, amber turn signals. The dash panel changed from the little slits to round green indicators. Same ones that you find in Scout 800s. And you started to see a lot of sharing of the parts across the platform. So now, like I say, window cranks and door handles were the same as the early Scouts. Started to see like the radio was the same. A lot of the interior parts and pieces were very similar. You started seeing more air conditioning options, the rear heater option for the Travelalls. Again, brakes were getting bigger. Stuff was getting more durable. As these trucks got heavier and more powerful, because that's the one thing I haven't mentioned was the powertrain. In the early days, 61, you were still limited to 6 cylinders, 241, that sort of thing. Three on the column was super common still, and then they had come out with the 266 V8, little V8. It wasn't until later, it's like 63, 64, that you had the 304 option. But you started seeing the 6 cylinders kind of phasing out in that time, because by 67, it was just getting harder to find a 6 cylinder truck unless it was, someone ordered it just base model. Most of the time they were V8, 304s were, I don't know if the price point on them was good, so that people just went with them or what, but man, you try to find a 68 that had options and a 6-cylinder, and it's tough. But we'll talk about that in a little bit too. So 65, you started seeing the updates. 66, very similar. They had seat belts now, a few other interior updates. The grill change, it still was the whalebone style, but now on the side of the IH emblem, there were two vertical, two horizontal bars that went side to side, or one on each side of the emblem, I should say. That's the 66 identifier. And then you start seeing more power steering in those, the RAM assist stuff. Everything just started becoming more robust as guys were just using them harder and harder. Especially the Travelalls and Travelalls getting used as logging crummies and mining transports and stuff like that. They just, were using them hard. And then about this time, the Lodestar came out, or Lodestar was a little earlier, 61, I think. But a lot of the parts were shared across that platform as well. So it's something that when you're looking for parts for your C series, don't discount the Lodestar, because there's a lot of similar pieces in those as well. 67, we saw another change to the grill. Now it's a mesh grill with the big International in the middle. The dash changed again. There was a parking brake warning light was added to the dash panel. There's a cover over the emergency brake pedal. Backup lights, reverse lights were on there. Again, seatbelts were standard by now. And they'd also changed the model number. So now it's a 1100B, 1100C. So, again, just confusing the way they ran their numbers on the data tags. So again, that's why we just went with the blanket C series model. And I believe 67 was the first year of the 345 that you could get in the pickups. Maybe 66, but up until then, there was 304s were the big V8 that you could get. And, like I said, just continue to update interior packages. There were different upholsteries, just things just to make them cleaner, carpet kits. And the Travelall had, you still had the option of the power back window or the barn door arrangement, depending on your preferences. And, then 68 was another one of those funny years. Same mesh grill, but now the headlights had aluminum bezels, big bulky looking rectangular bezels around the headlights. The interiors got nicer. There were various trim packages those started in the 66, 67, but they had gold backed gauges instead of the grays. You could have a deluxe or custom interior, which included various trim, chrome on the outside. Back then they were still doing the bare bones stuff where you could order your truck with no sun visor and no armrest and no mirror on the passenger side to save $10 it was minimal on the build sheet back then. But you started seeing the introduction of the 5-speed overdrive transmission, which is what a lot of people like. Just made for better cruising, because you were getting, by the late 60s, you're looking at economy issues, you're looking at the horsepower wars, why would you want to drive this Travelall with a 304 and 140 horsepower that was less expensive than a 68 Charger with a 440, and you could, I don't know, different model, different vehicles for different applications, and I get that, but when when everything is getting more powerful and your international is still just as slow as ever, it's a little discouraging. But the addition of the 5-speed meant you could at least do 65 or 70 on the highway and be a little bit more comfortable. The other thing that you saw introduced in like 66 was the automatic transmission, the Borg Warner BW11, I think they called it, and that went a long ways. I think the Borg Warner might have been available earlier, but you really didn't start seeing it until 65, 66. And I have a few plates here to put a Borg Warner on a 6-cylinder, which is even more bizarre. And I also have these schematics for putting a power steering pump on a 6-cylinder, which again, weird base model stuff. And I even see in one of the dealer books I have, there's a drawing to put an AC compressor and power steering on a 6-cylinder. So I would only recommend that if you had a 264 or 265 that had the power to move all those accessories. I'm not sure a 241 would have the means to run AC, power steering, and propel your Travelall down the road at highway speed, especially with an automatic. I'm sure they're out there, or they were out there, but I'm not one to recommend that. But it was an option, because that's what International was known for. It's options for everything. So so by 68 they had really refined more things. The door latch mechanism changed. The interior packages got nicer. The dash had gotten a little cleaner. They had a padded dash. By 67 they were padded, which really they just glued foam and vinyl to the steel dash, which makes for a mess nowadays when you're trying to do restoration. So yeah, it's we just peel them off a lot of times. Armrests changes, they got bigger. By 68 they were longer. The rear seats were fold and tumble on the Travelalls. Travelettes, like I said, had various options, and I'm not 100% certain if a 392 was available in 68. I've seen a few of them with 392s, but you can't ever verify if they're factory original. And these guys everyone always swears that, oh, it's factory, that's how it was, and we bought it that way. But man, 68 was a long time ago. So I'm not saying it wasn't possible, but the 392 introduction was right around there, and you just don't see a lot of them with it, especially with the cooling. The C-Series radiators weren't known for being the most maximum efficient, but they did an adequate job. What else? 68, you saw the power steering gearbox introduction, the Saginaw style power steering setup with the 2-piece column, which was departure from the old 1-piece column, and then the RAM assist that you could have had. We get a lot of calls for people looking for that 68 setup, and it's very hard to get. And then power brakes. 67, you started seeing the power brake option with the second clutch master cylinder was secondary. So because originally the 61 to 66s, the clutch and brake master cylinder were one unit together in a rectangle pot. And so if you had a problem and you lost some fluid, you would lose your brakes and or lose your clutch or everything. So by 67, they'd started to get away from that and went to the single dual reservoir brake master, and then the single clutch master that was offset to the side. I do prefer that hydraulic clutch just for feel, although when it goes out, like what happened to me recently, you lose your clutch altogether. So having that mechanical linkage is definitely more reliable, but I just like how the hydraulic clutch feels. So, but yeah, so round gauges, they're sharing stuff with the Scout 800s still. Yeah, just a lot of parts swapped across. Again, brakes keep getting bigger. Now you see the internal locking hub style of the half tons. The 3/4 tons, we're still using the external hub with the big six lug wheel pattern, which by 69 they went to 8 lug like everybody else. But yeah, from the 61 to 68 3/4 tons were cursed with that big 6 lug pattern, split ring wheels. So it makes them difficult nowadays, but back then I'm sure it was pretty standard. What else? Yeah, I really think that's about it. I really kind of covered the high points, various models. There were skid plate packages and transfer cases. The transfer case was a 202 all the way through the whole run, I believe. You could have gotten the 3-speed on the column, 3-speed on the floor, 4-speed on the floor, or 5-speed on the floor. And the 4-speed was generally a T98. The 5-speed would have been a T34 or T35, depending on if you wanted overdrive or direct drive. I've actually had a few C-Series trucks come through with direct drive 5-speeds, which are better for towing just because your gear ratios are a little closer together. So, those were transmission options back then. 6 cylinders, you could have had the 240, 241, 264, 265, 6 cylinders, or the 266 or 304 V8, 345 later in the late 60s. Your data tag is generally screwed to the end of the driver's door or the driver's A-pillar. Line set tickets, those are weird. It's not like the D series is where they were glued to the back of the glove box. I found C-Series line set tickets like stuffed in the headliner. Found them in the glove box. They, sometimes they're taped to the back of the glove box, but tape on cardboard doesn't really hold up. So finding the line set ticket in your C-Series is a little bit harder. I did find one stuffed in the seat back one time on a C-Series truck. So yeah, poke around your rig. You might get lucky and find one. But yeah, so that really is about it. The step side bed and fleet side beds, you could get them in various lengths. I've had 6, 7, and 8 foot step side beds here. And the 5-footer from the Air Force Travelette. I had one of those. Fleet sides were same thing, 6 or 8 foot. Or bonus load, sometimes they called them. But yeah, I think that's about it. I'm running out of stuff, so I think I'm just going to wrap it up there. Hopefully that was informative. Hopefully you learned something. Let me know if you need to know more. But I try to do my best. So anyways, thanks again for listening. Hopefully you enjoyed your Father's Day. Until next time, I'm Dan from Binder Boneyard.